Thanks everybody for joining, and just give you a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about, and note at the end we'll have plenty of time for question and answers, and hopefully we'll be able to get to all of your questions. And I thank you for your interest in this funding opportunity. So I'll be talking about the UCLA CTSI Translational Science Pilot Funding Program. I'll start out with just a brief description of the definition of translational research versus science and the distinction between those two things. We'll give you a bunch of examples of translational science, and then go through details of the funding opportunity, followed by question and answer. So some of these definitions are in part based on the CTSA network. There's probably other definitions that are out there. Happy to have more of a conversation, because I think the distinction between some of the distinctions between translational research and translational science can be somewhat subtle. But translational research is the process of traversing a particular step from basic science to discovery on the path towards improved diagnosis and treatment of a disease. In other words, the idea of taking science from bench to bedside to populations. And a lot of us do translational research. Typically, though, that research is focused on a particular disease and usually one step of that process. In contrast, translational science is really understanding the scientific and operational principles or barriers that underlie each step of the translational process. And so translational science often is really about the development of generalizable methods or tools to overcome those barriers to translational research. And then those methods or tools can be applied to translational research across diseases, conditions, treatments, healthcare delivery settings, and populations. And so I'll give you an example here of what would be translational research from the typical ways we classify translational research from T0 to T4. So basic science lab research might identify a particular chromosome involved in that produces a protein that develops into or contributes to the development of a particular disease. In this case, the Philadelphia chromosome and the BCR-ABL protein, and then CML. That translation of a protein and thinking about how we might interfere or block that protein with a particular drug or therapeutic, and then testing that therapeutic in a phase 1 trial. T2 research would be the phase 2 or 3 trial and obtaining FDA approval. T3 research would be translating that new therapeutic into clinical care and the replacement of that new therapeutic with older treatments. And then finally, T4 research would be looking at the impact of that treatment in terms of effectiveness, looking at its impact on quality of life or survival, comparative effectiveness, its implementation in the healthcare setting, and then maybe even at the population level, looking at disparities in treatment. And so if we think about that cycle from T0 to T4, translational research, we would be focused, the translational science would focus on the barriers. So at the early stages, it really might be about collecting genetic data or data repositories, looking at the relationship between phenotype and genotype, or measuring those two things. All the issues that might be involved, say, for example, in studying a rare disease, getting access to patients with the disease. It might be involving artificial intelligence and modeling as well. Whereas T1 through T2 science might involve, some of the barriers might involve doing the clinical trials and all the problems and obstacles to conducting clinical trials, including recruitment, retention, having diverse populations in our clinical studies, regulatory IRB hurdles, team science, the process of consent. And then for T3 and T4 research, barriers include dissemination, implementation, doing effectiveness research, precision medicine and looking at heterogeneity of effects across different subpopulations, thinking about cost, access, community engagement, quality of life measurement, and population health measurements, et cetera. So those are all barriers to conducting translational research, and then the science of understanding what those barriers are and potentially creating interventions or tools or methods to reduce those barriers or to improve the efficiency or accuracy of our translational research is really about the fundamentals of translational science. So let me give you some examples. I know that all sounds maybe a little bit sort of 30,000 foot view. So let's give some examples. And this is based on a website from another CTSA, modified it a little bit, but they give several examples of, on the left-hand side, these are not translational science examples. These are really more examples of translational research. And then on the right-hand side is sort of the same idea, but thinking about it from a translational science lens. So a translational research question might be testing a new compound in humans after showing it works in animals. That would be translational research. Translational science would be, the equivalent would be developing models or assays that better predict efficacy in humans. And that would be particularly effective if those models or assays could work across different types of compounds or different types of diseases. Translational research would be evaluating the specific toxicity of a specific new drug for Alzheimer's disease, whereas science would be, for example, creating an in vitro assay that more efficiently predicts toxicity in humans than current animal testing methods. Translational research would be identifying novel biomarkers of chemotherapy-resistant in lung cancer, sort of a precision medicine question. But precision medicine science would be developing a new framework or computational model that better predicts chemotherapy resistance across different types of chemotherapies or different types of cancer. A common barrier is recruitment and retention. So translational research effort might be retaining recently incarcerated persons in a longitudinal intervention study, but a translational science project related to that would be developing a new method to increase study retention among hard-to-reach subjects. For example, developing a protocol for snowball retention. And that method could be used for many different types of hard-to-reach subjects. And then lastly, another example of translational research would be creating a new database of patients with systemic sclerosis. Translational science would be developing more accurate or efficient methods to merge clinical data sets from different sources, or, for example, creating a novel natural language processing method to estimate disease severity from the electronic health record. These are all sort of generalized examples. If you're looking for specific real-world examples of translational science that has been funded, the CTSA and NCATS have NCATS has had 2 different RFAs in recent years, and I provided the funding opportunity links here on the screen. And you can go and look at those funding opportunities to see how they're described. And you can also go to NIH Reporter and look at grants that have been awarded under these funding opportunities. But for this last funding opportunity, the PAR 24-272, I've given you the 3 funded grants that have been funded on that FOA. So the first one is Bites to Bedside, Collaborative Development for Translational Clinical Decision Support. So in this project, the investigators aim to create a multi-institutional infrastructure to improve the effectiveness and scalability of clinical decision support systems by leveraging electronic health record data and enhancing data interoperability to improve clinical outcomes. So what the study is not, the study is not about just creating a clinical decision support tool. It's actually creating the infrastructure to improve the effectiveness and scalability of clinical decision support tools. So I think that's a really important distinction. The second example is improving efficiency, quality, and equity, randomized controlled evaluations of remote versus in-person clinical trial methods. So again, this is iterating on the traditional way in which we do clinical trials. And in this case, very commonly used example, they're testing the opportunity to do remote clinical trials versus in-person clinical trials, and looking at the difference between these two methods in terms of efficiency, quality, and inclusivity. And then the third is integration and interoperability of complex data and tissues from the human brain. So in this way, in this study, the project is developing a standardized virtual brain tissue bank and data platform across multiple institutions, integrating multimodal data sets and human brain samples to enhance research and clinical care, particularly for rare brain disorders. Again, this is a platform that can be scaled across different institutions and potentially across other diseases, for storing both tissue data and tissue samples and data. Okay, so that's the discussion of all the different examples of what transitional science is and sort of what we're hoping to see in terms of applications to this funding opportunity. And now I'll go through the funding opportunity itself. So we're looking to award up to 3 awards of $75,000 each for pilot projects. And the idea behind this is that the next round of our CTSA will be submitting roughly in 2006. And part of that grant that goes in one of the sections of our grants, we are required to include a specific translational science pilot in our proposal. So we're hoping to stimulate investigators within our CTSA to come with potential projects one of which will be included in the submission, and there will be opportunities when we get refunded to support other translational science projects. In the official CTSI application, we can include one project up to $250,000 over a 2 to 3 year period. So roughly about an R21 size grant. So for this particular funding opportunity and this pilot program, we're looking for 3 awards. In your project, at least one of those aims must focus on a translational science innovation that addresses a barrier to translational research. And then you may have additional aims in your project that address other questions that are related to translational research. And the entire project and aim should be feasible within the grant budget and timeline. So to be eligible, you must be a you must be a faculty member at one of the 4 partnered institutions, and you're more than welcome. And we certainly encourage, if you work with the community, to have a community partner as one of your co-leaders. Special considerations are for projects that are cross-cutting across diseases, themes, or disciplines, projects that broaden the inclusion of participants in translational research, and projects that apply AI or data science strategies to accelerate translational research, and then multidisciplinary cross-site teams. Some of the requirements for those who are awarded pilot grant, we'll be asking you to provide an interim progress report and present at our upcoming external advisory committee meeting on February 3rd or February 4th of 2025. Sorry, my error on that date. I'll go through this very quickly. It's all on the website. I think it's pretty straightforward, but the aims the specific aims, there's a 3-page application. The specific aims part should very clearly describe the translational science barrier that you'll address and explain its relevance and significance to translational science and research, and state the potential benefits and impact on translational research across other diseases. There should be a significance and innovation section that shows its impact on improving health and healthcare and its impact on improving translational research. You can briefly describe your approach and methods. It may be easier for some than others, but if you can describe your engagement with the community and identify your plans to connect with the community. Your community may be patients or populations, specific healthcare systems, or community partners. You briefly describe the investigators and your environment. And then again, a brief description of your timeline, outcomes, and future plans. There are additional components to the application that don't get counted in that 3 pages. There's a cover page, your bibliography, your budget and justification, and then of course the biosketches for you and your co-investigators. So here's the timeline. It's pretty tight. The pre-application, we call it a pre-application, is due November 1st. We'll review these quickly, and then there will be a collaborative process with some of the applicants in this collaborative period that will be from November 11th to the 22nd. We'll work with some of the applicants, and then we'll give a final announcement of the awards on November 27th, with a goal of starting funding on December 1st for 1 year. And for the collaborative process, just want to go through that in a little more detail because you might be wondering what that is. So we will do an initial review and then select a subgroup to participate in this collaborative process period. We recognize that this concept of collaborative science is maybe a little bit difficult for some to fully grasp, and some aspects are challenging. For example, creating a partnership across different institutes, if you're trying to do that, or think about how you might take what you're doing and work with different partners, or there may be issues in terms of just feasibility given the short timeline for recruitment or the design or feasibility. Certainly there may be issues for some with facilitating community collaborations. And so these are all things that during the collaborative process will help you with if they're struggling a little bit with. But if we see the potential, we will help you sort of refine some of the details in terms of either the pitch itself, its impact on science, or the design of the project. So we are encouraging as many of you to apply, even if you are still struggling a little bit with some of the details, because we do recognize this is a tight timeline, and we're willing to help you with that process and refining your application. And so this is the sort of end of the presentation. We did send out links both to the RFA and to the online submission form, but again, here are the QR codes for both. And an example of the first page when you do go to the submission page. And then I'll stop there for questions and answers. Yes, Dr. Cheng.
Hey, so in your presentation, you mentioned have 4 cooperating institutes being participated to this awards applications, as including the dental school.
Yes, dental school would absolutely be eligible for participation.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Just want to clear up that.
It's great to see. We tend to be heavily have involvement from School of Medicine, but it's definitely a big plus for us to have involvement from other schools. So any of the schools, engineering, dentistry, public health, any of the departments in the College of Letters and Sciences they're more than welcome to apply.
Wonderful, thank you.
And I wanted to add that the CTSI partner institutions are Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Harbor UCLA, Lundquist Institute, and Charles Drew University. So we just wanted to remind folks about that.
this may be a question people are having. So figuring out how a translational research solves a translational science challenge, it feels like come up with the nouns and adjectives to fill in, develop a novel method to overcome translational research pitfalls or challenges.
Yeah.
So if we think our project is somehow improving the way translational research will be done, that would meet criteria as one of the aims.
Yes. So something that maybe you figured out that could be applied to a different disease.
Yeah.
Something, if it's really on the implementation side, it could be something that scales across different settings, healthcare settings. The snowball retention was a specific example of a funded grant in transitional science as another example. So you might be doing something in your project that's innovative for translational research and no one's doing that. So if the method that you're using for any aspect of your science is maybe potentially innovative, and take that idea and say, well, maybe it'll work in other people's projects. That could be one way to think about it.
Thank you.
Dr. Chang?
And make sure I do have another question. So the last slides you're showing us, the submit online application, the ticket. So where can I find that ticket? I mean I screenshot the pages already, but just saying on the CTSI website, where I can find this?
I will put it in the chat. So that's the link to the main funding opportunity.
Okay.
And you should be able to find the link for the application. Yeah, it's at the bottom of that link. And we'll make sure it's in the...
Yeah, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's an icon that says submit your application.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so oh yeah.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Community co-lead is required for the application or is in the established in the collaboratory development.
Yeah, I'm not sure I caught the question you're asking. You want to repeat that?
Is community co-lead is a requirement for the application or is, during the collaboratory development period?
I think, are you asking about the requirement for collaborative?
For the community
collaborative. Yeah, community co-lead. That is not a requirement. We encourage you, but certainly it is not a requirement to have a community co-lead.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. That was listed under the eligibility. I think some people certainly with the T4 research, people are working very tightly with the community, and the projects are embedded in the community. So if you wanted to have a co-principal investigator or a co-investigator be a community leader, that would be perfectly fine. Do you have another question?
Yeah, is the team soliciting questions about projects prior to submission, or that's the purpose of phase one? I'm a little confused about, I'm still confused about whether I'm figuring out a loophole workaround or a legitimate strategy. So I'll be very honest.
No, I love that. I think, so rephrase your question there again. So you're wondering.
Is the committee taking, like, I don't want to use the time here for my project question. So are you guys soliciting feedback or inquiries prior to the submission, or that's the purpose of round one, is put in round one, and then we'll decide whether that is on scope?
Both. I think that we're happy to answer questions here. We're happy to help people think about what they're doing and kind of understand the translational science implications of what they're doing. We recognize that this is challenging for a lot of people to wrap their head around, even for people who are heavily involved in the CTSA from the beginning, as many of us are, and trying to explain this to others. We struggle with good examples because we recognize that it's hard. So happy to talk specifically about your example, and we certainly encourage you to submit whatever you think might be translational science, and we will help in the collaborative process if you get that far to help you sort of shape the details.
I have another question. I am checking the request for proposals, and it says that there is a 3-page application. Does it mean a 3-page research proposal? I'm not very clear on that.
Yeah, the 3 pages are, let me just go back to my screen and I'll just show again here that, oops, wrong one.
Or maybe I'm in the wrong place.
No, you're not in the right place. So going back to this page,
Okay.
this is the main application that includes the specific games, significance innovation, approach methods, if
Okay.
relevant, community engagement, investigators, and timeline. So that's a lot. Recognize that's a lot to put into 3 pages.
Yes.
But we didn't want to ask people to submit a 12-page application. That would be too much. So, but then in addition to those 3 pages, you get these additional components that are a brief cover page that will be the title of your grant and the investigators. This is all in the submission. A bibliography does not count. So any citations that you have in your main application don't get counted against the 3 pages. Budget, justification, of the sketches. Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I know that as people put their applications together, we'll probably have more people like Dr. Fitzgerald who have research programs or projects that they're thinking of, and they're wondering, does this fit translational science? If we can, we're happy to try to field questions, but I would generally encourage you to apply for this RFA and do your best to make the connection to translational science. And again, we will work with you to sharpen that connection and help you sort of plan out what might be a future translational science, with the idea that whatever you're working on or the innovation might be applied to other settings, patient populations, diseases, and specifically what the translational science barrier that you're working on. So I guess I did a great job of explaining the RFA and the difference between translational science and research. We can stay on for a few more minutes. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to talk to you specifically about a specific question related to your science if you'd like to stay on. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Please spread the word, and we look forward to your submissions.
Thank you.
Mitch, can
Thank
I ask
you.
you a quick question? Sorry,
Yeah.
just when you were getting off. This is
Yeah,
Tanat.
no, I'll stay on.
I'm sorry,
Nice.
you did do a very nice job. That's why. So I have a question about I guess sort of thinking about electronic health record data and cores, and how that might be something that would clearly help accelerate work that folks might be doing. So is that something that would fit for something like this, or would we need to go in saying we have these three projects?
So what would be this? I think electronic health records and access to or use of electronic health record data is definitely a great topic.
Yeah.
Is there something specific that you were thinking about there?
You mean in terms of specific projects?
Yeah, like the idea would be that with the pilot funding, you would do something specific to either understand the
yes.
barrier or overcome the barrier. So yes, you would propose a specific project.
Yes.
Does that answer
So
your question?
Yeah, it does. That's what I wanted to know. Like, it's not enough to be sort of like infrastructure or some type of core service.
Oh, I
You
see
would
what you're
want to
saying.
submit this with like, for AIM-1, we're going to do this with this, you know, core that we're trying to set up, because the pilots are 75 per year, right? That's the,
Yeah.
okay. So it would need to be for anything you need related to obviously get those aims done.
I see what you're saying. It could be, certainly the aim could be the creation of a core or a resource that helps people using EHR data access the data or
Yes.
access more accurate data.
Yes.
It would be nice
Yes.
if there was a methodologic or tool component that you think
Yes.
wouldn't just help it be executed here, but that there was something that you were creating that other institutions or other healthcare systems could use to deliver EHR to investigators.
Got it. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
But I think that's a good topic.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I might have some more questions as we think this over, but
okay,
I appreciate it.
Um,
Thank you. I'm going to drop off. Thanks so much, Mitch, and thanks everybody else.
Thanks, Nas.
Thanks.
May I have a questions specifically related to my project? So my question is, the developer intervention to treat disease for this program is only limited to, you know, medical drug, or still include alternative medicine, like use slow brief access intervention to treat disease, or not?
My hearing is not very good. I wear hearing aids, and I just didn't quite catch that. Arlene, did you catch that question?
My question is here is, this program is only welcome submission for treatment use, you know, chemical drug and something, or do you also welcome to develop some treatment use alternative medicine, such as slow brief accesses and something like that? such kind of interventions. In other words, do you have limitations only for such kind of interventions or not?
So for complementary meds as opposed to devices and drugs only. So are we limited to devices and drugs? And no, it doesn't have to be. Alternative therapies are an option, but there just has to be a translational science component to it.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Thanks, Arlene, for answering that. Okay, thanks everybody for participating. If you have more questions, send it our way. And thanks to Anne and staff for putting this together.